Welcome back to Mangastorian's Complete Story Series. Today we'll be finishing up our shorter episodes of Berserk so that we can get back to the full-length episodes. If you're wondering why these have been shorter, it's simply because we've had some production issues. But don't worry, we will be fixing that soon. Today we'll be covering chapter 102, 103, and 104. And when we last left off, Guts had discovered the truth behind the fairies in the village. His brand had begun to bleed, and Guts saw the fetus that Casca gave birth to in the fire. Not only that, the bodies of all of the children began to appear around him, and he shouted at the fetus, "Just try and take me with you." One of the burning children runs up crying as they grab onto Guts. He smacks them away with his sword. Guts then looks back at the fire, smashing down on it, stating that he can feel each and every one of them. As Guts starts to laugh, he says that he would have just spent the night puking up blood and slept in the mud. Elsewhere, Jill hears a wolf howling at the moon, and Puck pops up telling her not to. The animals won't attack as long as she's with an elf. He then starts to home in and points out, stating that the idiot is that way. The two of them head out looking for Guts, and Puck asks if she's sure that she wants to do this. They may not be able to turn her friend back into a human. As they reach to the top of the hill, Jill tells him who knows. Back in the village, she did get a response from her, so maybe, just maybe, they can turn her back from being an elf. When they reach the top of the hill, they look around to see so many lights, and as they look closer, they see Guts tearing through the spirits of the fallen children. One stops and asks where its mommy is, so Guts stops for a moment. Then he cuts through it, smiling. He goes on cutting down with smiles, laughing and smiling continually as they fall to his feet. As Jill watches, one of the spirits appears behind her, and she runs out scared. Guts brings down his sword one more time, but he stops as Jill runs into his path. He leans down to cover and protect her, but the spirits all start to gather on top of him. As the rest begin to pile on, Guts grabs a hold of Jill and he jumps. He continues to jump to escape until finally the sun begins to rise, and Jill begins to stand up, laying on top of Guts. He tells her that she should probably get off, she's kind of heavy. She quickly jumps off of him, and Guts tells her to get Puck out. He needs some of that magic dust. As she begins to help remove Guts' armor, what did the girl mean by peek off anyway? Jill tells him that it's an old fairy tale. A long time ago, there was a young boy who lived in a small village who had pointy ears and red eyes. All of the other children were mean to him for being different, but even though his parents loved him, he thought that they could not be his real parents. One night, he left the village to find his true parents, and eventually he came to the forest where the elves lived. All of the elves looked at Peacock, and the elves said that he does look like them, except that he has no wings. One of the elves then told him that a long time ago there was a mother and father who came in search of help for their dying son. Even though it was against the laws of their town, the elves helped save the boy, but in the process he was changed. Peacock ran back to his home to talk to his parents, but as he returned, the elves realized the human didn't tell anyone who they were, and grew a forest around the village as if it had always been there. Peacock then just wandered, always searching for his parents who went missing. Jill then says that Rosine loved that story. She would say that she was just like Peacock. Growing up, Rosine lived across the street, and with her being 4 years older, she was like the big sister to Jill. Rosine was more of a tomboy though, and she would always go play in the forest catching bugs and small animals. But one day down by the river, she found a small egg-shaped thing that had a face on it, and it always appeared to be important to her. Though at the time she didn't understand it, but Rosine's parents would always fight and argue. At times, Rosine would have bruises on her arms and cheeks, but one day, she said that there was a mistake in the Peacock story. She said that what happened to him was that he did find his parents and they lived happily ever after. But she has a secret. She's just like him, and she's supposed to be living in that wonderful land. It was all brought on because of the battle that took place before they were born. A lot of the villagers ran, but some didn't make it, and the soldiers raped the women, one being Rosine's mother. The arguments that came from her parents were around that, and her father was asking if Rosine was really his child. But during the night of a big storm, Rosine then came to her window all bruised and said that she was leaving forever. Jill asked where she was going, but Rosine told her to the Misty Valley. That was the last night that she saw her, and several days later her parents also vanished. It wasn't long after that the elves began to attack the village. Puck shuffles through Guts' pouch, asking if the weird stone that Rosine found looked like this, as he pulls out the behelit. Jill tells him that that's it, that's the strange stone that she had. Guts holds it out, telling her that this is a magical stone. It can summon an angel to give powers to the weak, or it may be a devil in disguise. He goes on to say how he used to know someone who had one of these. So she probably ran off to use it and changed herself into that thing, and in exchange she had to sacrifice something. To gain those types of powers, a person must sacrifice the people most important to her, which are most likely her parents. So in exchange for her dream to come true, she doomed her parents. Guts then holds out his sword, stating that her story isn't just a kid's fairy tale. It's full of blood, And this sword here, he cuts them down and stops their soul. He goes on telling her that because of her, he can't do anything about her loser father, and she has become some sort of little brat. This isn't the sort of place that you want to wander around in, so really you're just in the way. Jill gets up to slap him and Guts catches her, telling her that kids should be listening to kids' stories, so go back and hide with those little stories. Puck flies up asking how can he be so mean, but Guts grabs him and covers him with rocks and walks off. As Puck looks up, he sees Rosine, and he says that it's probably time that they get out of here. But before Jill can even get up, Rosine flies down and stares at her. Jill asks if it's really her, and Rosine walks up placing a frog on the top of her head. As Jill looks at the frog, Rosine and the elves all begin to laugh. She then grabs Jill, hugging her, stating that it's been far too long. Not far off, Guts begins to feel the brand bleed and he turns back. But back with Jill and Rosine, Jill watches as Rosine's hair and face begin to change. And once she's done, she sticks out her tongue, stating, "Boo." Jill asks how, her body, but Rosine dances around laughing, stating that she told her a long time ago that this is her true form. Jill looks back to what Guts said about sacrificing her parents, and Rosine grabs Jill by the hands, telling her that she remembers all of the things that they used to do. She's just going to invite her to the land of the elves, to Misty Valley. She turns back to the other elves and asks if anyone agrees, and they all wave yes. Rosine then grabs Jill by the waist, stating that it's going to be fine. There's nothing that she needs to worry about. They will get to play games all day until the sun rises. Rosine then flutters her wings, but back through the forest, Guts bursts out swinging down. Just as Rosine realizes what's going on, she flies off, and Guts only cuts off part of her wings. She screams as her face changes back, and all of the elves begin to turn into insects. Jill tells Rosine to please just stop, but she holds Jill tight and flies off. Guts scoffs as she leaves, saying that he guesses he's going to have to kill Jill as well. Puck asks what does he mean, and he tells him, "You know why." Puck yells at him saying, "How could you be so heartless just sitting there? Go off and do something." Guts looks down at the parts of the wing that he cut off, and he asks himself if there's something that he may have overlooked. Elsewhere in the sky, Rosine tells Jill not to worry, she isn't going to drop her or anything. She then tells her to look. The view from up here is something that the humans don't get to see. It's only something that the elves get to see. Jill looks around, stating that those sights are so beautiful, and Rosine goes on saying that they can fly as much as they want, and she can too, if she joins them. Alright, now that concludes chapter 104, and we'll get back to our normal length next week. I am sorry for the shortened length, but we did have some issues happening behind the scenes, but it's all fixed now. So I hope you guys enjoy, and don't forget, follow us on Twitter @MangaStory and subscribe to get your weekly dose of Berserk.